I'm Oli Barrett, and over the next few weeks, I'm going to be travelling to meet the chief execs of some of the UK's most successful listed companies. I'm going to find out what drives them, about the challenges they've faced and what they've learned, and most of all, about the impact that they want to have on the world around them. Welcome to the Ambition Nation Listed 50. Today, I'm in conversation with the founder and chief executive of Impax Asset Management, Ian Simm. Ian, welcome.
Hello.
Ian, just why don't we start by you telling me a little bit about Impax and the work that you do?
Sure. Well, Impax Asset Management is a money manager. That means that we manage money for asset owners around the world, so insurance companies, pension funds, and regular savers. Okay. And what we do that's really unique is we invest all that money in what we call the transition to a more sustainable economy. That's really areas like clean energy, water supply, recycling, areas that we think are going to be growing really rapidly and where there's a real misunderstanding about asset value. So that's how we make money.
Got it. So you're the connector, if you like. You're being trusted with huge sums of money by, could be banks, pension funds, and I suppose your job is to scout for those wise investments that are frankly good for the planet.
That's right. So we have over 60 investment analysts and investment managers all around the world, Europe, US, Asia, and their job 24/7, I hope, is to look for innovative companies that are really misunderstood by the market, set for extraordinary levels of growth and great levels of investment return.
Can you give us just a sense of the sort of companies that might end up being invested in by Impax, just to really start to bring it to life?
So companies that are investing, for example, in the growth of the wind sector, companies providing water purification, water conservation, so drip irrigation, for example, in the agriculture space. A lot of interest at the moment in energy efficiency, so how can companies and individuals in their homes save energy through better insulation, through better lighting, through better control and instrumentation. Quite technical stuff, but in a way is where the secret lies, because we're sort of going under the skin of the headlines and really understanding where is money being spent and where profit's being made.
You started the business over 20 years ago, and in many senses, you were quite ahead of your time. I'm just trying to work out on a personal level why that was, how that was. How were you so tuned into this 2 decades ago?
Well, actually, my personal journey started in the late 1980s when I was graduating in science and really not sure what I wanted to do, but I was captivated by a book that had been published called Our Common Future, which was the report of what was called the Brundtland Commission, which was a UN effort to try and understand the future of the planet. And that report came up with the term sustainable development, which is effectively what society needed to do to ensure that human habitation could survive over centuries. So in other words, recognising this problem around sort of resource availability and pollution.
Why don't you just give us a quick snapshot of the business today, just in terms of numbers, people, you have offices around the world. Just remind us of the shape of the business.
Yeah, sure. So today we've got about 210 staff in 6 offices. So the UK, Ireland, Hong Kong, and we've got 3 offices in the US. So that's the sort of footprint. We're managing just less than $50 billion US. That's in a combination of listed equities, private equity, and fixed income. And we've got over 100 institutional clients.
We've seen Brexit, obviously the COVID pandemic. Why don't you just help us reflect a little bit from the business's perspective, how you've navigated that and what you've had to do differently as a result?
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually looking back, say, 5 or 6 years, because Impax in 2015 was managing sort of $5 or $6 billion compared to nearly 50 today. So what happened to give us more 8 to 10 times scale up? Well, actually the Paris Climate Agreement at the end of 2015 was a real sort of trigger point as investors realised that the planet's, or society was committed to try and do something about climate change. And that, coupled with, since then, sort of 5, 6 years of quite sort of risk-on type investing environment has meant that we've been able to pursue growth in that area. February, March 2020 was a really uncertain time for everybody, for business and for investors as well. And at that time we were managing about $20 billion, I think, 20, 21, 22, something like that. And if you'd asked me then, what would it be like for Impax 12 months later, I'd probably said, well, we'll do well if we kind of hold the fort and stay stable, right? Stay at the same level. But actually today we've increased by 150%. So it's been quite extraordinary, and looking back, it's almost hard to believe. What's really happened, I think, is a combination of the fact that asset owners have stayed the course with investment managers, so not not taken money out, that the Build Back Better agenda, which many countries are adopting in their post-COVID policy, has really helped to signal the way for investment in clean energy and in clean infrastructure, and that's really helped us.
Can I ask you about the benefits, potentially benefits, of being a listed company in the overall picture, but also particularly through turbulent times? What do you notice? You're in the driving seat.
We've been listed since 2001. In the early days, it really gave us a sort of a stamp of quality, a kind of reassurance to our prospective clients that there was some solid governance there. And I would still say the same, that by being listed, prospective clients and current clients know that there's a degree of probity about the business, a degree of sort of governance, transparency within the rules that they can rely on. And it's really important for us that 20% plus of our business is owned by management.
Excellent.
And creating equity or equity instruments in a business is really straightforward if it's a listed company. So as more people join the company, it's relatively straightforward for us to provide them with some kind of equity interest. And I think that's really beneficial, not just to them, but also to clients who can see that alignment.
Excellent. So one glance at the share price will tell us that you're doing many, many things right, and the business is doing phenomenally well. What are the big challenges now as you look out across this next 12 months? What would you say? And why not let's blend in some opportunities as well. We don't need to go doom and gloom, right?
Yeah, we've got to keep on making great investment returns. We've got to keep the people, the talent here happy and aligned, and we've got to make sure that we stick within the rules. So that goes without saying. I think that the additional challenge that Impax faces is managing growth. So 150% growth in assets under management, 25% growth in headcount in roughly 15 months. That's been a challenge. Hopefully it's not going to carry on at the same percentage rates, because I'm not sure that we can deal with that. But in the context of us being ambitious for realising the opportunities, we do want to carry on growing. We've got a huge opportunity in the US. I think the administration over there is really pointing the policy signal towards sustainable development. We're about to see a lot more capital from US investors interested in what we do. Similarly in Asia, the investment opportunities to deploy capital are growing really rapidly.
You mentioned the US. I wonder if there's a clue hidden in your answer about our opportunity here in the UK. I mean, to what extent would you like to see our own leadership similarly evangelical around just the vastness of the opportunity?
Well, I think the UK is up there in the global leader group of countries who get sustainable development, understand how to deal with climate change. So, for example, we're right at the top of the tree in terms of the Climate Change Act, which sets this sort of mandatory target for 2050, that the pledge for national net zero. We were the first country to formally adopt that. And really sort of crucial policy trajectories around getting out of coal-fired power generation by 2025. I think it's now 2024, likely to stop coal-fired generation completely. No internal combustion engine new vehicles from 2030. Commitments to offshore wind sector development. So these are really sort of on a global scale, globally leading policies around this transition to a more sustainable economy.
Good. Can I ask you a question on net zero? When you hear companies declaring around corporate net zero, I mean, it's tempting to say, well, this is all good and we must carry on. Or should we be a bit more cautious, a little bit more questioning of some almost the accidental side effects of these sort of declarations?
Yes, it's a really interesting question actually, because I think it's essential that we get national governments to commit to something like net zero, otherwise we're not going to maintain the planetary temperature at a sensible or habitable level. But it's a real mistake to say that a national net zero should translate into corporate net zero or net zero for everybody, because what that does is it forces today's entities to spend money to do things that maybe they're not really well placed to do, and it potentially crowds out innovation and substitution. So for example, if the steel sector was to get to net zero, it's going to have to invent new ways of making steel or scale up unproven or barely proven ways of making steel. That's going to be enormously capital intensive. If we could substitute, as it's possible to do, much of the steel that we use, for example, in construction with cross-laminated timber or wood-based products, we can reduce the volume of steel, invest that capital in timber and wood processing, and that's a much more efficient economic solution. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The unintended consequences of net zero are really important to examine.
Yeah, but it's a challenge though, because there's an urgency which calls for simplicity and clarity.
and yet the reality is nuanced and complex, and that's hard for leaders to navigate their way through.
I think what's really important about the net zero language is that it is a call to arms. Yeah. It is a reminder or a major prod to decision makers to do something about climate change. Yeah. At the national level, we can take it almost literally. That does make sense. But at the corporate or entity level, it's a mistake to take it seriously, to take it literally rather.
So let me ask you a bit more about Impax's sort of ways of working, because clearly you're deploying capital into fantastic companies. You're doing more than that. You're interested in policy. You're interested in the future of technology. Tell me why you have that sort of wider view, if you like, and how you go about that.
Policy work's really important in the context of furthering this idea of sustainable development. So policymakers around the world, not just in the UK, are really interested in what the financial sector thinks about energy transition, about materials efficiency, the circular economy, about water regulation. Because at the end of the day, it's the private sector capital that supports the investments that make these transitions happen. Yeah. And policymakers need to understand the details of how investors think. So that policy bit is really valuable to the system, but clients really like it as well.
Yeah. And on that, are there particular interventions that you have spotted that you are calling for, particularly on that policy piece? And we might be talking UK or more broadly.
Yeah, I mean several. I think the crucial thing, for example, about renewable energy scale-up is that you need licenses and you need an agreement from a government level about how to evacuate the power from, say, the offshore wind sector. So if every offshore wind farm had to produce its own link to the shore, offshore wind would be phenomenally expensive. It wouldn't actually work. So government can really come in and create regulated monopolies, if you like, around offshore to shore connection for offshore wind. The hydrogen economy, another really interesting area. So if government could start up the ball rolling in terms of demand for hydrogen, for example, by trialling and then almost mandating blending of hydrogen with natural gas in the gas distribution network. If we get clustering around industrial clusters all buying hydrogen at the same time with some kind of tax break in a particular part of the country. That sort of thing government can really help with.
Can I ask you about what you see really motivating the organisations, huge organisations, investing in Impax?
In simple terms, investment management is about investment beliefs. You know, where do you want your money deployed? How much risk are you willing to take? Investment opportunities within the investment belief structure, and risk.
So understood.
What we're doing essentially is looking for opportunities in the future economy, managing risk in a really holistic fashion, and providing this additional reporting, impact data, etc., which gives the sort of additional colour to the results. I think we're doing three things as well as we possibly can, which may be sort of going the extra mile. So first of all, we're screening markets for long-term potential. So where will these sectors of the economy be, consumer discretionary or materials, where will they be in 10 years' time? And what does that suggest for where we should look? Second thing we're doing is we're analysing companies pre-investment in a holistic fashion. We're taking a broader radar sweep of opportunity and risk, and we're taking a longer term view as to how these opportunities and risks may play out. So that sort of full dashboard, if you like, of company analysis is something that we've really perfected. And the third thing is once we've invested in a company, is making sure that we're building a dialogue and connection with the management team and potentially the board, and challenging them on how they can improve things further.
What should and could the UK be learning from other countries, particularly when it comes to sustainable investment?
I think the UK is doing a very good job around long-term policy roadmaps in areas, for example, like transportation for passenger vehicles and clean power. The idea of a national net zero target, where the UK was leading, was also really powerful. I think the UK could do a little bit more potentially in sort of strengthening the dialogue between industry and government, including the finance sector. So the hydrogen economy, I think there is a real opportunity for business, finance and government to sit around the table and map out for the UK a strategy that creates demand that or potential demand that then stimulates investment in supply. Creating hydrogen to decarbonise heat is pretty essential to a significant degree if we're going to fully decarbonise. I think that will be one area.
Just briefly, and on that cross-sector conversation, why do you think that conversation isn't better at the moment? What's the cause?
There are a number of trials at the moment for hydrogen in deployment to the natural gas grid, for example, for substitution. But I just think that the level of ambition is just not quite there. And it's more a question of sort of do more rapidly than change the approach.
Understood.
So get on with it.
We're in the run-up to COP26 in November in Glasgow. To what extent is that an important gathering from a business leader's perspective, and why?
The idea of COP26 is to cement the pledges and the roadmaps that were agreed in principle at the Paris Agreement in 2015. And everyone's looking to COP26 to sort of to confirm what was agreed in Paris in detail. So it's absolutely essential that there is a follow through and a success in that area. If there is, and I'm confident that there will be, then business will redouble efforts to invest in the transition to a zero carbon economy, and we'll get real momentum behind the transition to a more sustainable society. If there's a stumble, if COP26 is not a success, or if there's a big delay in getting to the results, I think that there will be caution and a holdback at boardrooms. The capital won't be flowing as rapidly, and the essential sort of early start of decarbonising in the 2020s ahead of 2030, which is sort of crucial starting period in this next 20-30 years of decarbonising, will get held back, and that's going to be a real problem.
Back to the big picture, the pressure is on Impax to find the breakthrough technologies, the most impactful and sustainable investments that you can. Can you give us any sense of what you see as particularly interesting in terms of areas that you're particularly watching, industry sectors, trends perhaps? We've
been investing in maybe a dozen or so sectors in this area of the sustainable economy for a long time. Yeah. Areas that are particularly standing out at the moment, I think, are in the area of food. So at the moment, 25-30% of food is wasted, either because it's lost between the sort of the field and the retail outlet, or because it's wasted in people's homes. So there's a huge amount of efficiency improvements that can be realised in agricultural production, in food manufacturing, in food transportation, and so businesses are making money from helping with that. And then there's of course a revolution in food tech, so less meat, healthier foods. The opportunity in healthcare to move towards expanded healthcare in emerging markets, personalised medicine, responding to lifestyle type diseases. These areas we're definitely paying a lot of attention to. How about geographically? Are there particular parts of the world that seem to be producing some of these really exciting investments? Anywhere that you would particularly be looking? Well, I think East Asia is a really exciting area for the manufacture of advanced technology that's really helpful in many of the industries that we're following. So, for example, the production of advanced solar panels in China, the production of silicon-based products and technologies that help with the sensors that the Internet of Things and making smart and sort of sustainable infrastructure really relies on. We've got some really interesting innovation out of Israel in water technology, water conservation. And then in Europe, I think we're still in the vanguard of chemical processes, and hydrogen electrolysis. Electrolyzers definitely being produced out of China, but some really innovative electrolyzer manufacturers in Europe. Yeah. And I think the UK is in the vanguard in many areas, high tech, looking into sort of materials efficiency, circular economy. A lot of really interesting UK companies there. Yeah. To what extent have we got the minds we need solving these problems worth solving? I mean, the urgency couldn't be greater. You see some amazing talent. I just wonder if we've got enough. There's a real need for the best and the brightest minds to come together to help solve climate change. But what's really important is that we create the markets for the goods and services that are going to get us there. Markets for renewable energy, for energy efficiency, for materials efficiency improvements, etc. market creation comes about from having the right policy and regulatory frameworks with medium to long-term perspective. So this idea of decarbonising transportation, of switching completely away from fossil fuel power. If regulations and government ambition is entirely clear and reliable, money will flow. When money flows, businesses can make commitments, hire people, get people working together. So I think the solution here is this idea of policy roadmaps that can deliver net zero sector by sector. Policy roadmaps are going to work if there's a dialogue between government, industry and finance, and that's what Impax is committed to helping to accelerate. You've
been here for 20 years as Impax. You are doing extraordinary things as a business. What would you say your edge is as an asset manager? And to put it a bit more bluntly, what differentiates you from the others?
Well, I think it's probably three things. So the sort of starting point is our investment analysis. So the fact that we've got mixed teams of engineers, former policymakers, people that used to work in industry, who are all collaborating in an efficient process to really unpack where the opportunity is for companies we're investing in. Mm-hmm. I think the second thing is our culture, and so the fact that we've developed this collegial culture. We've got a real alignment of interest between staff and the shareholders, and crucially we're sort of paying close attention to diversity and inclusion, mm-hmm. and making sure that we've got diverse teams and the best possible contributors to decision making. Yeah. I think the third thing is this idea of sort of our role in society. So we've got a very active charitable partnership program. We provide not just grants but also volunteering support to 4 different groups working in our community, not in investment, who are sort of advancing the cause of sustainable development in other areas.
You're clearly interested in solving the biggest problems. You're clearly interested in more than just business and the overall health of the planet. Ever tempted with a sidestep towards the political world, Ian?
I was president of student government way back, and I found it quite sort of not a great experience. That sort of politics is not for me.
It put you off.
Politics is not for me.
So business is your
it is, yeah.
is your home.
Yeah, you've got to place your strengths, right?
No, understood, and we're very grateful for that. You're making a huge difference. Ian Simm, thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.